Good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Wednesday. I'm laughing. I'm laughing because there's so much energy behind the scenes. Can't even imagine what you are in for because as you know, I've got Robin Daniels here today. And for those of you who don't know Robin, absolutely, you want to check out his content. Robin's been a CMO 3 times. Yep, 3 times at Matterport, at WeWorks, and at Vera. But what I want to also note is he's taken companies through IPOs like 2.5 times and has led LinkedIn's most successful talent products. So he knows a couple things about talent. Get this. This guy in his spare time runs daily, prioritizes his family, and wears t-shirts that say fuck the norm. You heard it here. But what we're going to find out is where his energy comes from and why this is so important for us to tap into without burnout. So it's all you. Thank you so much, Robin.
This might be the best introduction I've ever had, Lauren. It's so good to see you.
Oh my goodness. I cannot disappoint.
Can you just be my hype man? Can you just kind of follow me around and just
Absolutely. I would love that. Like Berlin that last week, London the week before. Oh my God.
There you go.
So
it's good to see you.
It's great to see you. And we're gonna get into this topic of energy because I'm very much wired the same way. Good morning, Tegan. Very much wired the same way that I need a lot of energy. I expend a lot of energy. But the question that I really want to tap into first is explain what it means and why it's so important as an energy multiplier, which is how you refer to yourself, as a leader, that you multiply this energy for yourself and for others. And like we hear this stuff all the time. Oh, they have such great energy. But why is this so important for a leader and for each one of us to tap into?
It comes back to there's so many reasons why I think being an energy multiplier is like one of the most important things you can do. And it doesn't mean necessarily that this only applies to extroverts. I think you can also be an energy multiplier if you're an introvert too. But what it means to me, and I always keep this in mind, especially as a leader, I think about it this way, that every interaction I want that people have with me, whether it's one-on-one or in a group setting, can you see me or should I?
Yeah, I'm curious. Hey, other people who are tuning in, let us know if we have a black screen, okay? Because we can see perfectly, and it looks like I can't tell if it's streaming or not, and I don't want to get off of this. Other people chime in. So please go ahead.
I can see you at least.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was going to say, so to me, it's really about the mindset that I have around being an energy multiplier is around every interaction that I have with other people, whether that's my team members, my peers, or even my boss. I want them to have energy after the meeting that I've spent with them. I want them to leave the meeting thinking it was not a waste of time. And that's kind of what I mean by it. I think like whatever time, if I spend 30 minutes with you every week, or maybe a couple of hours, I want that time to be well spent. I want it to be meaningful. And I want it to be memorable. And so I put a lot of energy into every interaction that I have. I want it to be positive, engaging, exciting, maybe thoughtful, maybe meaningful in some way. Yesterday I was in Berlin. I gave a presentation at a conference, and I poured a lot of heart and soul into making this speech I was giving about how to do epic marketing and growth marketing and how to think through it and so on to these couple of hundred people who were there. I thought, well, they've taken the time to come here and see me, and I want to make sure that they get their full value worth. And I think, and that it was well spent time and energy for them. And they leave that session with me thinking I either learned something, I had some fun, or there was something insightful about it. that they go on and they bring that energy on to the next meetings that they have. There's nothing worse. You've probably met many people in your life. I know I have, where you're so drained after meeting them or sitting through this meeting. And it's like, and then it just kind of drags you down throughout the rest of kind of your day. And then you have to kind of figure out ways to pick yourself up. And so I don't take for granted that people want to spend time with me, again, whether or not that's my team or peers or other people. So I'm always thinking, like, how can I give back as much energy as I can? It does mean the downside of being kind of an energy multiplier. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm often very exhausted. I'm like, okay, I just need some time for myself, because I pour a lot into every single interaction that I have. Because again, I want it to be really meaningful. But it applies to more than just the people that I, like in my direct sphere. It also applies, I think, to getting customers. I think about it this way: if you're meeting with a company or a prospect and you're trying to convince them to buy your product or your service, at the end of the day, it really comes down to the transference of enthusiasm and energy. If you leave a meeting and the customer or prospect is as excited as you are about your product and service, you've done a good job. Whether or not they buy or not, there's a lot of things that go into that, of course, but you don't want to leave a meeting with it being draining or confusing. So I'm always like, in every meeting, especially if you're a salesperson or you're out there on the front line trying to convince customers, being that energy multiplier, because then they take it back. Of course, they become evangelists to their peers, their boss, and so on. And ultimately, I think this leads to better outcomes for everybody. And honestly, the third thing is
we're going to take this framework,
yeah,
and I'm going to shift it to apply for candidates, right?
Yes.
So if we use this paradigm and we say, okay, hiring manager is your prospect, and you are your product and service, and you are not getting them as excited as you are, there's a disconnect. And so
a huge disconnect.
How do you tap into that energy? And more equally, not more important, equally, what does the energy signal? Because the energy, you hear this: good energy, bad energy, energy, energy vampire, right? So what does the energy convey that indicates, okay, this person we should bring on our team, or this person, bye-bye?
It's one of the key things. I think being a good manager or being a good leader or being a good hiring manager, a lot of it comes down to psychology. And that means being able to read the signals of the body language. And of course, it's different for every person, but there are some universal things to look for in how people use or receive information. I can always tell. This is why I think sometimes in the beginning, when we first entered this pandemic, it was so hard to actually lead and manage people, because when you're just seeing the top of their head, you're not getting the full picture of what that person actually is kind of expressing with their energy. A lot of times it's body language, people sitting like, they're crossing their arms, that they have a frown on their face, or they look confused, or they're closing off, or nothing, right? Versus like, oh, you're leaning back, you're kind of like opening yourself up, those like signals are so important. And then I think in the hiring, if you're a hiring manager and you're looking for great candidates, your job is to steer the conversation in a way where the candidate feels at ease to open up more. It's intimidating being a candidate. I've been on the other side many times, and sometimes when you feel like you're being grilled, it's never a nice feeling, never.
Right.
And at the same time, and if you feel like the interviewer is not interested and they don't care, it's not a nice feeling either. So a good hiring manager, their job is to make you feel at ease at the end of the day. So you will get to the things that are interesting about you and why you're qualified for this job. So you can tell a story, because a lot of interviewing comes down to storytelling. I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, and here's the impact that I had, and here's how I thought about it, blah, blah, blah. You're telling stories. And again, it shouldn't be a one-way conversation, but the interviewer's job is definitely to make you feel at ease. I mean, I've actually walked out of interviews with people when I felt like they were just like either not interested, or they were downright just like it felt like an interrogation. They did not make me feel at ease. I'm like, I just stopped it and said, this does not feel like a kind of process or a company I want to be a part of.
Okay, you just stole my thunder, right? Because that was my next question. So here I am, reverse this. I'm the candidate, and the person who's interviewing me is like cardboard. right? They have no energy. They
Yeah.
are just like on the struggle bus to really like tap into something. Maybe they're not excited about the organization or the role. What do we
Exactly.
do? What does the candidate do then? Because it's not like we're gonna like pass them a Gatorade. I mean, what do
Yeah.
we do?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, what you can do is, if you're the candidate, I think honestly, it's okay to resign yourself that this is not going to happen. I think it's better you making that choice than getting the rejection later anyway, because you don't really want to be a part of it. And if you're the hiring manager, I think you really have an obligation. It comes back to the energy. Like, these people have taken the time to spend with you, and you have an obligation, whether you like it or not, whether it's like in the middle of the day or in the middle of a fire. Like, you gotta like spend the time and the energy on actually making sure that you're giving them the right environment where they can actually excel. So the way you do that is, oftentimes in my mind, this is where I think small talk is a little underrated. You start with a lot of small talk. I mean, it's a great way of getting somebody to open up. The first couple of minutes is always super nerve wracking, usually for the candidate, but also sometimes for you if you're like trying to like get somebody, excited about your job. Just getting some
That
small talk
rapport
is like
building can
the
be a great
rapport.
spark plug, right? It's
Totally,
that spark
totally.
plug to like set that off, and those often can
Yeah,
lead to much better interviews that aren't so cookie cutter and structured, because now it is more reciprocal in the
yeah,
two-way communication.
totally. I'll give you an
For
example.
sure.
This was when I was at WeWork. I was the chief marketing officer over there, and I was, leading a massive team, the biggest team of my career, just about 400 people when you count everybody and contractors. It was a big team, and I had two very senior leaders, and they were not getting along. And we were sitting in a room and we're talking through various things, and we've kind of come to a conclusion about here's what we're going to do to go forward. And everyone's like, yes, okay, this is what I'm going to do. But their body language was not saying yes. They were all sitting like this, right? And I just kind of stopped the meeting and said, well, we're not leaving this room until we actually come to a way of collaborating together that's positive for everyone. Because body language is so important, and it comes back to the interview process, right? If you're not skilled enough to read body language, there's so many great YouTube videos, books about it, and so on. But it's a key part of actually making sure that you can find the right people for your organization. And again, that depends on the role you're trying to hire for, the level of seniority. Of course, if it's somebody who's super junior, your job as an interviewer is to make them feel at ease. It's super nerve-wracking when you're just starting out your career and you're sitting in front of somebody very senior and they're grilling you in some way, or it feels like it, versus a very senior person. Oftentimes it's a walk and talk, or it's like, hey, let's meet for a coffee, or for dinner or something. I remember when I was interviewing over at LinkedIn, as an example, I was talking to Shannon Bray, who was the CMO at the time, and we met at a coffee shop in Burlingame. And one of the reasons she liked meeting there, of course, it's a more casual environment. It's not as stilted as being in a conference room. But she also she wanted to see how I interacted with like the staff around there, how I treated them. Like, she didn't want assholes on her team, right? And I think it was a great little like psychological trick in some ways to see that I could treat people, everybody, doesn't matter your station in life, with respect and dignity, and I thought it's a great way of like getting to know somebody in a non like confrontational, non like virtual or like artificial environment. Yeah.
Totally. I completely agree with that. What I want to move on to right now is, kind of like the underbelly or the devious side of energy, because you've distinguished between the go and the two types of hustle culture. The one that really helps you to optimize your energy, and the one that sucks the living daylights out of you. Tell us how we know and where the lines are crossing and or not.
Yeah, it was something I was been thinking a lot about, because I feel like when I first moved to the US, I think you kind of mentioned my story a little bit in passing, but I just kind of briefly bring it up here. I was 21 when I bought a one-way ticket from Denmark to California. and I hustled my way through like succeeding in life, and for me, hustling was a positive thing. It was like going above and beyond, being so excited about what you do, waking up every day with a feeling of energy and being part of something bigger than yourself. And working on things that just are exciting. Not every day. I'm not naive enough to think that every day is going to be full of roses, but at least like the hustling was like a way of how you just like made sure that whatever needs to get done, we'll get it done in a very like positive way. We're in this together. And I feel like hustle culture in the last couple of years have nearly gotten a very negative rep, and maybe rightly so in some ways. But I think, but if hustle culture is all about, doing work that's kind of meaningless, burning out, just kind of keep working for assholes. To me, that's not what hustle culture should be about or is about in my mind. Well, of course, nobody is endorsing that. I mean, really, it's fairly simple. I think there's books and tomes and podcasts about this. At the end of the day, what I find is most people, they want to work on a mission that they believe in, and they want to feel like they're making a difference doing it, and they want to work with cool people. Those are the three things. If you have those three things, it's pretty simple. Of course, if one of those three things are missing, and you're just working aimlessly for a mission you don't believe in, or you're working with jerks, of course you're going to feel like, why am I hustling so hard? It's meaningless.
Right. And
it's
where's the joy in this? I mean, I'm spending all this time, I'm sacrificing my family. I can't get a workout in. My nutrition is off, blah, 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 right? Yeah. I'm going to take a minute here because we've got Amy Horner in the house. Amy is the one who's doing 50 marathons. We're talking about you, and we were applauding what energy, 50 before 50 marathons before she's 50.
I can't even comprehend. My mind explodes.
Yeah, you made our day. Asha, thank you. This whole screen thing, I'm sorry, you guys, I'm obviously not going to stop. But I can see that some people are here and some people are not. It's live. Oops, same here. But I just want you to know, sorry for the technical difficulties, but we're on an energy ride, so we're going to keep on plugging away. I love.
But on hustle culture, I think I definitely look for it in the people I look to work with. Because if you look at my trajectory, it's a lot of like very intense startup or growth journeys. And I think it's nearly impossible to do those without a little bit of hustle, meaning like you have to be creative, you have to be excited by it. Average work or work where you're not excited about it just doesn't really cut it, because like every day counts. And so, and again, I want to be clear, it's not about like working yourself to death. That's not what I think hustle culture is all about.
I think what you're talking about in the most plain terms is fire.
Yes, absolutely. There's three things I look for. I was just talking about this yesterday at this conference. I said, when I hire people at all levels, three things that are absolutely core to the journeys that I've been on is grit, aptitude, and passion. Those three things are kind of like
aptitude and passion.
Yes, right? Exactly. Like they don't have to have all the answers. They can come from different backgrounds. They don't even have to have the right or the perfect educational background. I don't really have that. I've jumped around from industry, but do they have the grit? Like, have they been through some shit? I mean, oftentimes I like people who've been through some hardship or who want to prove themselves, because once you take a chance on those people, they will often go above and beyond. They'll, again, hustle their way because they really are so hungry for success.
Right? Oh, so this is a great message. And I want to also extend this a little bit to folks that come to me on a regular basis and say, I'm being rejected because of ageism. Right? Yeah. And we're not going to get into ageism per se. What I'm going to say is ageism is alive and well. There's no question about it. But what you can do about your candidacy is to activate that grit, passion, and aptitude for sure.
Totally.
And if you are able to demonstrate that, to your point, many of those people, and of course, clients that I see, they're able to overcome a lot of the perceptions about themselves based off of the ability to clearly tell their story, but also because that is so contagious, that energy is such, that fire is so incredible that it is a way to help to compensate.
I think it's a great example. And I 100% agree. I think ageism is alive and well, unfortunately. But that's a great example of where energy is so important. I'm sure we've all met people who are like, in their 40s like me, but they seem like they're much older because they're just like heavy energy. Or you've met people who are in their 60s and they're just like, you leave a meeting with them and go,
I want
holy
that,
shit,
right?
I want that. Exactly, right? So a lot of it is like how you show up and then how you actually think about using the best, because of course, again talked about this yesterday. The great thing about hiring people who are much more seasoned or veterans, like their pattern recognition, their ability to lead, their ability to hire well, their ability to actually see around corners is way higher than somebody who's just starting out. So there's so many good things about hiring those kind of profiles, right? But of course, but the young ones, they just have fire in their belly in a way. And if you can combine that fire with somebody who's kind of been through the ringer,
right?
Aptitude.
Right. So that's skill. I want to also touch on this because, none of us are strangers to rejection. None of us are strangers. And I mean, you've been so gratefully transparent about the times where you have like hit the wall and, just like fallen flat on your face. I hate the word failure, but like, let's just say you're eating dirt, right?
Exactly. It's a good way of putting it.
But my question to you is, how do you regain that energy? Because, it's easy. It's so easy to like kind of get in that groove of, oh no, here it is, another day that, I'm in my job search, or I'm at a company where I just can't stand the culture, or I don't believe in the mission. How do you invigorate or tap into the energy when it feels like you got no gas?
I will just be clear. I think when you go through failure, it really sucks. It really sucks, especially in the moment. I mean, it's always easy in hindsight. Oh, that was great for my life, and great. Of course it is, but in the moment, it really sucks. I've been laid off. One of the worst times was like 2 months before my son was born. Like standing there without a job. Like, shit, how am I going to support this kid? My family, and it's just kind of nerve wracking. So it really sucks in the moment. There's no doubt about it. The way that I've always gotten around it is to surround yourself with people who can help lift you up. One of the worst things I see happen to a lot of people who go through really hardship, they close themselves off. That's the worst thing I think you can do. And I get it. When you feel like a failure, you just kind of want to be on your own. I just want to bury myself. I just want to eat myself to death. I just want to sit and watch TV and eat chips and, eat the burger and so on, which I've certainly been there. But it's one of the worst things you can do. I mean, surrounding yourself with people I've learned, it's just one of the best things. People can lift you up, who can help elevate your mindset, your energy, and so on, because you're certainly not there yourself. It's very hard, I think, coming from within at that point. Not to say you can't be done, but I think really like surrounding yourself with great people, and it's one of those things I started on early in my life and career, just always thinking about it, because I remember reading this. You're kind of like the sum of the people in your life, and I truly believe that. Of course, you have to have the inner fire to want to change and so on. And there's always a little bit of reckoning for why certain failures happen. Sometimes it's completely out of your control, but it still feels like a failure. If a company's not doing well and they have to lay off half of the company, even though you get chosen, you're like, why did I get chosen? What was it me? Well, no, isn't somebody else? Like, there's always these like questions in your mind, even though it might just have been a totally calculated decision from the company and so on. So there's always a lot of like self-doubt and recrimination, I think, that happens when you go through these failures. But it's a good way to reflect. But honestly, the way that I've always gotten out of it is the people in my life. I had a friend who lost his job. This was in, I think, April of 2021, and he was really going through a hard time for a long time. And his natural inclination was just to kind of cut himself off. He didn't want to see people because he's just like, because it's nearly a little bit of embarrassing. But I'm like, it's not embarrassing. It happens to people all the time, right? But people feel like it.
But we think we're that special snowflake, right?
Exactly.
That we're so special, and
totally.
And I too have been through layoffs. I've been on a performance plan. And I'm just like, oh my God, I cannot believe that this is really happening.
Exactly.
And I mean, it's still like, ooh, like that happened to me.
Of course.
Who cares? Who cares? It's what you do
exactly.
with it also,
Yeah,
right?
of course, absolutely. And you can, I think, if I look at like on a graph, on a timeline, I think when it happens, you definitely go down in the dumps, of course, and then you can kind of pick yourself up. But you also got to figure out how to have some small wins along the way until you find your footing.
Totally.
Because if you keep learning into this, again, what happened to my friend, he would apply to, I think, nearly 100 jobs, and everybody just kept saying no. And of course, then you start losing. You got to have some wins in there, and that might be on the job front, it might be on the personal front. Maybe it's about you learning something new, meeting new people, traveling if you can afford to do so, getting new experience, but opening your mind. I think, we're already living a crisis of loneliness, and a loneliness epidemic. And if you're trying to cut yourself off more, I worry that it's not the best way to get yourself out of that very negative headspace that oftentimes happen. And then if you just sit and doom scroll and read the news all day, that's not going to help either. Trust me.
Like hashtag energy suck.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I want to talk about this theory or belief that the almighty Brendan Burchard talks about in his book, High Performance Success Habits. And the number two success habit that he talks about is generating energy. And I'm just going to read a little bit about what he says. He says, no surprise here, but low energy is highly correlated with low performing success. And high performance is tied to high energy. People with high energy achieve more success in their primary field of interest than their peers. The great thing about energy is that it's not something that you are born with. Energy comes from transforming the way you think and feel about any given situation. So I'm just going to include that in the chat so that other people also can, feel free to comment. Here's the quote. So I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on that? Is that like a bunch of...
I have many thoughts on this. First of all, it's like when I read a headline in like the BBC, it says, happier employees are more productive. I go, yeah, no shit. That's kind of like my reaction to that. Like if I ask anybody who's listening to this, would you rather want to be around somebody with low energy or high energy? Of course, most people would say high energy. Nobody really wants to be around with low energy. But then the question is, well, how do you make that happen? And for me, I learned at a very early age. I was, my parents have always been kind of like seekers of self-improvement. Actually, both my parents write self-help books, which is ironic. Well, maybe not ironic, which maybe explains a little bit about my mindset. So I've always also been like fed that myself of like how to improve myself, both physically and mentally, and of course spiritually as well. So I've always been a seeker of that, like never sitting still or taking anything away. I always think I can do better. I'm never like at 100 in terms of my evolution. I'm always like getting better, and that certainly is like, and you have to work for it. The other thing is also seeking out, I think, new ways of doing things. I think this idea of being a student for life is something that I really also try to embrace. Students don't know what they don't know. That's why they go to school, and they learn new things that are kind of interesting, and it challenges them in new ways. I think being around people who can challenge my way of thinking or teach me new things is something I've always enjoyed being around. And that also requires yourself to be honest about where your deficiencies are or where your gaps are, and having a little bit of self-awareness around that, so you can go and kind of at least figure out a path to get there. You might not know exactly the straight line, but at least like, I'm going to go do some things. And then I've also just taken, honestly, a lot of courses on this kind of stuff. And I've seen lots of, I would say, various management gurus, spiritual gurus, all kinds of things that have kind of like influenced my way of thinking throughout life. And that's, again, part of that process of always thinking I can always learn more and become better. And so, but you got to find the ones that appeal to you and speak to you. There's a lot of them, like Laura and I were just chatting about. There's a lot of gurus or coaches out there, maybe too many. It's like finding the people like who really kind of speak your language, speak to your gut feel. I'm a big believer in gut feel. I talked a lot about it on my profile and the articles I write. It's like, at the end of the day, if you're uncertain about something, you always got to listen to your gut feel about something. It feels off or it feels like it's not right for you, don't do it. I've made mistakes in hiring. I've made mistakes in jobs. I've made mistakes in following certain things that were not right, even though, because everybody was saying this is the right thing. But even though my gut feel was telling me, no, gut feel counts for a lot.
So, again, shifting that back to you, person watching who may be in the market for your next career move.
Yeah.
So whether it's a networking conversation, because those happen too, and we know how powerful referrals are. Come there with a sense of fire about what this person is all about, and also, I think that this self-awareness thing is really, really, really critical. We talk about it. I have a guest coming in a couple of weeks that talks about the risky business of emotional intelligence. So, what does that mean for you if you know that you are feeling exhausted and tired?
Totally.
What are you going to do so that you can show up in that interview, so that you're not like spreading your kind of attitude on other people? That's like really bad. And managers do that all the time, right? They have a bad day, or they have a number on their back and they're all stressed about that. So it works in both directions.
I would say, if I can give one piece of advice, the most important thing, if you just have 10 minutes with somebody, you're networking, you're out there looking for a new job, think of it this way. I want this 10 minutes I'm spending with whoever person is to be the most valuable 10 minutes that this person is spending all day. I want them to look back on their day and think, that 10 minutes I spent with Asha or Jen or Claudia was fucking awesome. I wish I had more time with that person. I want it to be the most valuable time I spent all day. That's the mindset. That's the mindset. So if I have 5 minutes, if I have 10 minutes, I have half an hour, I'm going to make it worth their while so they remember this meeting.
Oh my goodness. You just answered the last question, which was, what could we all do leaving this conversation to pass this energy along, not just to make ourselves feel good, let's be honest, in order to bring that energy and to generate it, multiply it, enable it for other people in your network, in your current situation, in your personal life, among your colleagues. And a lot of times I'm on the phone or a Zoom call with somebody, and I mean it when I say, like, you're the high of my day. Like, you are the high of my day right now. Every time my kids call me, you're the high of my day. And that is for sure. So sometimes I have a lot of highs, but sometimes I have lows too.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's no limit, right? It's a buffet. You can have as much as you want. Robin Daniels, you have been the best half an hour of my day already. I'm not even lying. I want more of that Robin Daniels. Like, I am coming to Denmark, and like, I seriously, whatever it takes. And you and I are going to have a lot of fun outside of these lives. And thank you for bringing everything that you brought today. I'm sure there's like skid marks someplace in the stream from all this good juju. And I so appreciate you. And I have seen so many wonderful comments here about the importance of energy that I think we all take so much for granted, how much opportunity we have to access it, and what it can do for other people that we surround ourselves with. So thank you so much. You're a total.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, everyone.
Sorry about the technical difficulties. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye. See you next week.
Bye.